To survive the storm, she ran into my shelter, then froze at the sight of a human. Lightning crackled in jagged lines, illuminating the barren, rocky plains that stretched for miles. Captain Elias Ward tightened the straps on his weather suit and adjusted the sensors on his outpost. Alone on this remote planet at the edge of explored space, he had grown accustomed to solitude. But storms like this reminded him that nature was unpredictable, even in worlds humans had claimed to understand. The small shelter he called home, a reinforced cube of metal and composite materials, shook as the wind slammed against its walls. Outside, the storm's fury was deafening. Rain of sharp ice crystals battered the reinforced windows, and the automated sensors warned of rising atmospheric pressure. Elias double-checked the instruments, his hands moving quickly but carefully. Every reading seemed stranger than the last. The storm's intensity was unlike anything the data had predicted. As he leaned over the central console, trying to make sense of the readings, movement caught his eye. A figure struggled against the gale, hunched and stumbling across the rocky terrain. For a moment he thought it was a hallucination, a trick of the wind and lightning, but the figure continued, crawling, dragging itself forward. Elias' pulse quickened. He activated the shelter's external lights, which pierced the storm's gloom in bright, harsh beams. The figure paused, silhouetted in the glow. It was unlike anything Elias had seen before. Its limbs were elongated, its body slender, and the skin shimmered faintly, reflecting the storm's light in strange colors. A helmet-like ridge covered its head, and its eyes were wide, almost luminescent, filled with terror. Instinct overrode hesitation. Elias activated the shelter's outer door and rushed outside, fighting the wind. The storm tore at his suit, but he moved with determination, holding out his hands in a gesture of safety. "Come here, quick!" he shouted, his voice almost lost in the roar of the storm. The figure froze. For a long moment it simply stared at him. Then, as if recognizing the urgency, it lunged toward the shelter. Elias grabbed it, supporting its trembling body, and dragged it inside. The door hissed shut, sealing them from the storm. Inside, the heat of the shelter contrasted sharply with the storm outside. The alien collapsed onto the floor, shivering violently. Elias quickly removed his gloves and knelt beside it. He noticed its form quivering, not from fear alone, but from cold that had penetrated even its strange, seemingly resilient physiology. "Easy," he said softly, keeping his tone calm and steady. "You're safe now, you're okay." The alien's large eyes widened at him. It had frozen at the sight of a human, staring with a mix of disbelief, fear, and something like awe. Elias could see the hesitation in its posture. Every instinct screamed to run, to retreat, to escape, but it had survived this long only by fighting through fear. "I'm Elias," he said, introducing himself even though he doubted the alien understood the concept of names. "What's your name?" The alien made a faint sound, almost a whisper, but it did not speak words. Its body trembled and its gaze did not leave his face. Elias realized this was not just fear, it was confusion. On its planet, humans were rare, if not entirely unknown, and stories painted them as dangerous. Elias gave it space, moving to activate the shelter's environmental controls. He increased the temperature and directed warm air toward the alien. He then grabbed a thermal blanket, wrapping it gently around the shivering figure. "You need to warm up," he said. "Do you hurt anywhere?" The alien tilted its head slightly, considering him. Its eyes, large and luminous, flickered as if processing every movement, every tone of voice. Then slowly, it lifted one hand, pointing toward its chest. Elias followed the gesture, noticing faint burns and scratches along the alien's torso. Clearly, the storm had injured it. "All right," he murmured, pulling his medkit from the storage compartment. The alien watched him closely, its body still tense but slightly less rigid. Elias cleaned the wounds carefully, applying antiseptic and light dressings. Every motion was deliberate, calm, meant to reassure. He did not rush. The alien's trust would have to be earned. Hours passed. The storm outside showed no signs of letting up, and the shelter's sensors indicated rising energy readings in the atmosphere. Elias and the alien remained close but cautious, two beings forced into proximity by circumstance. The alien, finally still, began to study him with curiosity rather than fear. Its movements were hesitant, exploring his presence, his gestures, the patterns of his behavior. "You're safe here," Elias said again, glancing at the instruments. "The storm is strong, but the shelter can handle it. Just rest. We'll get through this together." The alien blinked slowly, almost imperceptibly nodding. Elias allowed himself a small sigh of relief. For now, at least, the immediate crisis had passed. As the storm raged, Elias reflected on the unusual patterns he had been recording. The storm's energy pulses were inconsistent with natural formations. It was as if the planet itself were alive, or worse, as if someone or something was controlling the weather. He shared this observation aloud, half to himself, half to the alien. "Strange, isn't it?" he said. "I've never seen anything like this. It's almost intelligent." The alien turned its head, tilting as though considering his words. It was clear it understood more than it could communicate. Elias recognized the tension in the air, both fear and curiosity, a fragile bridge between two very different beings. Night fell, though the storm made it impossible to discern the sky. Inside the shelter, the only light came from monitors and emergency lamps. Elias offered food and water to the alien, simple rations, which it accepted cautiously. Eating was a ritual of trust. He observed every reaction, every hesitation. Slowly, the alien began to relax, its posture easing, the shivering subsiding. By morning, the storm had not abated, but the alien had adapted to the shelter's environment. It moved more confidently, exploring cautiously but with interest. Elias noted its agility, the way it adapted to the artificial gravity and the enclosed space. Its species clearly had evolved for survival in harsh conditions. Elias realized something important. Humans were not the only resilient beings in the galaxy, but his own adaptability, his ingenuity, and his calmness under pressure had created a bridge between them. In the face of fear, he had acted not with aggression but with careful observation, calculated risk, and empathy. That was what seemed to matter most. As the storm continued outside, Elias decided they needed a plan. The shelter could hold, but supplies were limited, and the alien could not survive indefinitely in such conditions without support. He began working on a strategy to analyze the storm further, to understand whether it was a natural phenomenon or something more sinister. The alien watched him work, its head tilted in fascination. For the first time, Elias noticed a flicker of what might have been admiration, or at least recognition. Perhaps, after hours of fear and survival instinct, it was beginning to understand the human before it. He spoke softly, more to himself than to the alien. "We'll figure this out, together." The alien's eyes met his, wide and bright. For a moment, the storm outside seemed to fade in significance. Inside the shelter, in the midst of a tempest that could have claimed them both, an unlikely alliance had begun. Elias did not know how long they would remain trapped by the storm, or what awaited beyond the walls of the shelter. But in that moment, he understood something profound. In the galaxy, survival depended not just on strength or technology, but on the ability to understand, to connect, and to act with calm and intelligence in the face of fear. The alien, still wary but no longer frozen with terror, gave a small movement, a gesture of tentative trust. Elias responded with a smile, simple, human, reassuring. Outside, the storm raged, indifferent to the struggles of the small beings inside the shelter. But inside, warmth and light and a fragile understanding persisted. Two species, brought together by circumstance, would face the unknown. And for the first time, the alien saw not just a human, but a potential ally, a protector, and perhaps a friend. Elias returned to his instruments, noting strange spikes of energy in the storm. He did not yet know the full danger they faced, but he understood this. Whatever came, the alien would not face it alone. And in that realization, he felt a quiet confidence, the kind that humans carried in their survival instincts, a confidence born not of arrogance, but of experience, adaptability, and courage. Hours turned into the night and the storm continued. But inside the shelter, the first threads of understanding between human and alien had been woven. And in the heart of chaos, that was the first step toward hope. The storm continued for hours, maybe even days. It was hard to tell. The shelter's sensors had stopped reporting a normal day-night cycle, leaving Captain Elias Ward to rely on artificial lighting and his own routine to keep time. The alien he had rescued, whom he had begun to call Lyra for convenience, was slowly adjusting to the shelter's environment. Her movements were less cautious now, though her luminous eyes still flickered with alertness, scanning every corner as though she expected danger to appear from the walls themselves. Elias worked methodically, checking the shelter's sensors and environmental controls, noting the irregular energy spikes that continued to pulse outside. He was puzzled. Natural storms didn't behave like this. The winds were erratic and the lightning strikes followed patterns that seemed deliberate, almost like signals. It made him uneasy. Lyra watched him from across the shelter, her head tilted. She was curious but cautious. She had never encountered a human before, and the first moments of fear still lingered in her mind. But something about Elias' calm, careful way of moving and speaking reassured her. Humans, she realized, were not as impulsive as her people feared. They seemed to think, plan, and adapt, and that made them dangerous in a very different way than brute strength could ever be. "You are studying the storm?" Lyra asked, her voice soft, hesitant. Her words were accented, a gentle melody that Elias could barely follow at first. "Yes," he replied. "It's unusual. I've never seen a storm like this. Something about it doesn't seem natural." He gestured to the sensors, pointing at the erratic spikes of energy. "These readings, they're too structured, too precise for normal weather." Lyra leaned closer to the monitor, her large eyes scanning the graphs and data. She nodded slowly. "Not natural, but why controlled?" Elias shrugged. "I don't know yet. That's what I need to find out." He paused, glancing at her. "But we can't just sit here. If this storm is being controlled, we need to understand how." Lyra's body stiffened. "You want to go outside?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. She had survived harsh environments before, but this storm was unlike anything on her planet. Its energy felt alive, almost sentient. Elias shook his head. "Not yet. First, we prepare. We figure out what we can handle, and then we go out carefully, together." For the next few hours, they worked side by side, though in silence at first. Elias showed her how to use simple tools to measure wind patterns and temperature fluctuations. Lyra observed, fascinated, and then began offering suggestions in her own language, which he gradually learned to understand. Her species had a precise way of thinking, calculating, predicting, and noting patterns in the environment with astonishing speed. "Try adjusting the directional sensors," Lyra said, pointing to one of the smaller instruments. "It will give clearer readings on the storm's central energy source." Elias followed her advice, and sure enough, the data became more coherent. The storm's energy spikes seemed to converge at a point far from their shelter, moving across the plains like a storm beacon. "So," Elias said, scratching his chin, "there's something causing this, something controlling it." He looked at Lyra. "We have to find it." Lyra hesitated. "It is dangerous, could kill you." "I know," Elias said simply, "but sitting here doesn't help either of us. We survive by understanding what we face, and maybe by working together, we can survive better than either of us alone." Lyra studied him, her expression unreadable. Then she slowly nodded as if accepting his words. She had survived alone for days in harsh environments, but humans acted differently. They adapted, they improvised, and they did not panic easily. That was something her species did not fully understand, and perhaps something they underestimated. Elias prepared the shelter's outer suits. They were reinforced for severe weather, insulated against freezing temperatures and capable of withstanding strong winds and energy discharges. He handed one to Lyra. "Wear this. It will keep you safe." She hesitated, staring at the suit. Its bulk seemed strange to her delicate frame, but she trusted him. Slowly, carefully, she slipped into it, the material adjusting to her alien form as though it had been made for her. Elias checked the fit, ensuring she could move freely. When she stepped toward the outer door, the storm's fury struck them immediately. The wind pushed hard, lashing against the shelter's walls, sending sheets of ice and debris flying. Lyra froze, instinctively lowering her head, but Elias took her hand. "Step with me," he said. "We go together. Don't look away, don't hesitate." And so they stepped out into the storm. The world was a blur of red skies and lightning, the ground slick and treacherous. Every step required focus, every movement had to be deliberate. Elias led the way, his instincts guiding him through the chaos. Lyra followed, matching his pace, learning from his careful movements. As they moved, Elias explained what he had learned from the sensors. "See that energy pulse," he said, pointing ahead. "It's moving east. Whatever is causing this storm is over there. That's our target." Lyra nodded, gripping his hand tightly. She had never seen such determination in a human before. His courage was not reckless, it was calculated, precise, and yet full of resolve. That combination of thought and action, it fascinated her. The journey was slow. The storm resisted their progress at every turn. Lightning struck dangerously close, and sheets of ice threatened to knock them off their feet. But Elias continued, setting small markers along the way to track the storm's movement. Lyra helped, her alien agility complementing his human endurance. They were a team, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. After hours of careful movement, they reached a ridge overlooking the plains below. From here, they could see the storm's strange patterns more clearly. And there it was, the source. A structure, partially buried in rock and ice, pulsed with energy. Its design was alien, unlike anything Elias had catalogued. Jagged metallic spires jutted toward the sky, and faint lights flickered along its surface in patterns that almost resembled communication signals. Lyra gasped softly, her hand gripping Elias' arm. It is a station." "Not natural, someone built this." Elias nodded. "Exactly what I feared, and judging by the storm, it's active. We need to find a way inside, carefully." They descended toward the station, using every skill they had learned from each other. Elias moved with human ingenuity, finding stable footing and predicting falling debris. Lyra used her agility and spatial awareness to navigate around obstacles, pointing out weak spots in the structure's outer shell that could serve as entry points. As they approached, the energy from the station pulsed stronger, almost like a heartbeat. Elias adjusted his sensors, noting a strange frequency, one that seemed almost alive. Lyra's hand hovered near the energy field and she flinched slightly. "It is aware," she said. "Like the storm itself, it senses us." Elias frowned. "Then we have to be careful. One wrong move and it could destroy everything." They entered through a narrow side passage, hidden by ice and jagged rock. Inside, the station was dark, the hum of energy filling the chamber. Lights flickered along walls lined with strange panels and instruments. Elias approached one panel, examining the controls. Lyra leaned closer. "It is complicated, many systems unfamiliar to you." Elias smiled slightly. "Maybe. But humans are good at problem solving." He began to manipulate the controls, carefully testing the system. Lyra watched, fascinated by the way he approached each challenge, not with brute force, but with patience, observation, and trial and error. Slowly, he managed to stabilize part of the system, reducing the immediate energy spikes that fueled the storm outside. The lights in the station flickered, but the storm's intensity dropped slightly. Lyra's eyes widened. You can control it." Elias shook his head. "Not completely, but we can manage it enough to survive for now, and maybe figure out who or what is controlling this." Hours passed as they worked together, understanding the alien systems, combining human intuition and alien precision. Lyra began to trust Elias fully, following his instructions without hesitation. She saw how humans could adapt in ways her species could not, improvising solutions in moments of crisis. Finally, they paused, exhausted but alive. Outside, the storm had lessened slightly, though it was far from over. Elias looked at Lyra. "We did well, together." Lyra nodded, her body still tense but her eyes bright. She had survived alone for a long time, but she realized something important. Humans were not just survivors. They were capable of clever, deliberate action in the face of danger. And in the quiet moments inside the station, as they both rested and watched the storm through reinforced windows, she felt something new: admiration. Not just for Elias, but for his species. Humans were resilient, adaptable, and brave in ways she had never truly understood before. Elias broke the silence. "Tomorrow, we explore more. We find the source of this storm, and we figure out why it's happening." Lyra nodded, a faint smile appearing despite her exhaustion. "I will follow you together." As they settled for the night, the storm's hum echoing outside, both felt a quiet determination. The storm was strong, but humans, and now humans and allies, were stronger. And together, they would face whatever the storm had in store. The inside of the station felt old and tired, as if it had been working for far too long without rest. Low lights flickered along the walls, and the steady hum of energy echoed through the metal corridors. Elias moved carefully, placing each step with intention. Lyra followed closely, her senses alert to every vibration beneath her feet. The storm outside had weakened slightly, but it was still powerful. The station continued to feed it energy, and Elias could feel that time was against them. "This place was not meant to run forever," Lyra said softly. "It was abandoned. Someone left it active." Elias nodded. "That's usually how disasters start." They moved deeper into the station. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls, shifting in slow patterns. Elias stopped often to study them, comparing them to the data he had scanned earlier. He did not understand the language, but he understood systems. Power flowed here. Control flowed there, and somewhere ahead something was very wrong. Suddenly, the floor trembled. Lyra grabbed Elias' arm. "It reacted to us." Before Elias could respond, the lights flared bright, then dimmed again. A deep sound rolled through the station like a warning call. "That didn't sound friendly," Elias said. They reached a wide chamber at the center of the station. In the middle stood a tall structure, almost like a pillar, covered in moving light. Energy flowed into it from every direction. Cables ran from it into the walls and deep into the ground. Lyra stared at it in silence. "This is the core." Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature, and it's still active. As if responding to his words, the core pulsed harder. The station shook, and outside the storm screamed louder than before. Alarms began to sound, not loud but sharp and constant. Lyra's breathing quickened. "It knows we are here. The system is defending itself." "Then we don't give it time to decide," Elias said. "We shut it down." They moved toward the control panels surrounding the core. Lyra focused on the alien interface, her fingers moving quickly as she tried to interpret the symbols. Elias watched the energy readings, calling out changes as he saw them. "The storm is pulling power faster now," he said. "If this keeps up, the whole station could overload." Lyra's eyes widened. "If that happens, the storm will become permanent." Elias looked at the core. Then we stop it now. A sudden jolt threw them both to the ground. The station roared as energy surged through the walls. A section of the ceiling cracked, sending debris crashing down behind them. The exit passage collapsed. Lyra stared at the fallen metal. "We are trapped." Elias pushed himself up, coughing. "Then we solve the problem before it solves us." He scanned the room quickly. The core chamber had emergency shielding, but it was not designed for people to stay long during shutdown. Radiation levels were already rising. Lyra noticed the readings and stiffened. "This chamber will become unsafe soon." Elias studied the controls. "There's a manual override." Lyra shook her head slowly. "That override requires a living presence. Someone must stay inside the control field to keep the system stable during shutdown." Elias understood immediately, meaning whoever does it won't be able to leave in time. Silence filled the chamber, broken only by the hum of the core. "I'll do it," Elias said. Lyra turned sharply. "No, you cannot survive that." He met her gaze calmly. "Maybe not. But humans are good at lasting longer than expected." "That is not enough," she said, her voice tight. "You saved me. I will not watch you die." Elias stepped closer to the control panel. "If no one does this, the storm will destroy everything. You, me, this planet. Someone has to take the risk." Lyra looked at the core, then back at Elias. Her hands trembled. "You are very strange," she said quietly. He gave a small smile. "We get that a lot." The station shook again. Time was running out. Lyra suddenly stepped past Elias and placed her hands on the controls. "Then we changed the plan." Before Elias could stop her, she began rerouting the system. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Your species adapts," she said. "Mine calculates. Together, we do both." She redirected power flow through the station's lower conduits, reducing pressure on the core. The energy readings shifted. Elias understood. "You're splitting the load." "Yes," Lyra said, "but it still needs a stabilizing presence." Elias looked around, then at the core. His eyes narrowed. "What if we don't stay inside the field?" he said slowly. "What if we trick the system?" Lyra paused. "Explain." Elias grabbed a portable sensor unit from his belt. "The system reacts to biological signals, heartbeat, neural activity. What if we simulate that?" Lyra's eyes widened. "A false presence." "Exactly," Elias said. "Human tech isn't elegant, but it's flexible." They worked fast. Elias modified the sensor, linking it to his suit's biometric system. Lyra adjusted the alien interface to accept the signal. The station shook violently as they worked. Cracks spread along the walls. The storm outside howled louder than ever. "Now," Elias said, placing the device into the control field. The system hesitated. Then it accepted the signal. The core's energy output stabilized. Lyra began the shutdown sequence. The lights dimmed, the hum softened. Slowly, painfully slowly, the energy flow reversed. Outside, the storm weakened. Then the alarm stopped. The core went dark. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the station released a long, deep sound like a breath. The storm outside began to fade. The red clouds thinned. The lightning stopped. Elias collapsed to one knee, exhausted. Lyra caught him before he fell. "We did it," she whispered. They sat there for a long time, listening to the silence. Eventually, emergency lights guided them to a secondary exit tunnel. The station, now powerless, no longer resisted them. When they stepped outside, the world looked different. The sky was pale and calm. The wind was gentle. For the first time since Elias had arrived on the planet, the horizon was clear. Lyra stared upward, her eyes reflecting the quiet sky. "The storm is gone," Elias nodded, "and it's not coming back." They made their way slowly back to the shelter. Both were tired, bruised, and drained, but alive. Inside the shelter, Elias checked the systems and supplies. Everything was stable. Lyra sat near the heater, silent. She seemed lost in thought. After a while, she spoke. "On my world, humans are feared." Elias looked at her. "I figured. You are seen as unpredictable," she continued. "Too emotional, too stubborn, too willing to risk everything." he smiled faintly. That's not wrong. But now, Lyra said, meeting his eyes, I understand something. Humans do not risk everything because they do not care. They do it because they do. Elias said nothing. You stayed calm when fear was strongest, she said. You chose cooperation over control. You did not see me as weak or dangerous, only as someone who needed help. Her voice softened. That saved both of us. Elias looked away, uncomfortable. Just doing my job. Lyra shook her head. No, you did something more. Outside, the calm world stretched endlessly. The storm that had once ruled the planet was gone. And in its place remained something far more powerful than fear. Trust. The station was silent now, except for the low hum of energy that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat through the walls. Captain Elias Ward and Lyra stood side by side, their breaths visible in the cold air that filtered through the imperfect insulation. The storm outside had calmed somewhat, but the sky remained a violent swirl of crimson and violet, reflecting the energy that still radiated from the alien structure. Elias wiped sweat from his brow despite the cold. We've stabilized part of it, but the core is still active. That's where the real danger lies. He gestured toward a central chamber deeper inside the station. Lights flickered across its walls, casting strange shadows that made the metallic surfaces look alive. If we don't deactivate it, the storm will return, and it could be even worse than before. Lyra stepped closer. Her luminous eyes scanned the corridor ahead. It watches us, she said softly. The storm, the station, it knows we are here. Elias nodded. Then we need to be careful. Everything we do from now on has to be precise. He took a deep breath and began moving forward, Lyra following, her body tense but determined. She had learned from him that human bravery was not reckless. It was deliberate, calculated, and focused. The central chamber loomed ahead. Its doors were massive, etched with patterns that pulsed faintly with energy. Elias examined the control panel beside the entrance. The symbols were alien, but he noted their positions and sequences. We need to disable the main energy flow, he murmured. If we can do that, we can stop the storm. Lyra stepped closer, her hand hovering over the panel. I can help, she said. I understand some of the circuits. Together we can. Careful, Elias interrupted gently. One wrong move and it could overload. He pointed to the interface. I'll guide the timing. You handle the connections. They worked side by side, hands moving quickly and deliberately, combining alien technology with human intuition. Lyra traced circuits and wires with precision, her fingers nimble, her mind calculating voltages and currents. Elias manipulated levers and buttons, adjusting energy flows based on his observations and gut instinct. For a moment the station pulsed violently, as if resisting their interference. Lightning-like arcs of energy jumped along conduits, striking the floor with sparks and heat. Lyra flinched, but Elias held her gaze. Focus. We've got this, he said calmly. His tone was steady, unwavering, and it grounded her fear. Together, they bypassed several energy nodes. Lyra's knowledge of the station's design complemented Elias' improvisational skill. Where she saw patterns, he saw opportunity. Where he found gaps, she calculated the safest paths. Every step brought them closer to the core. At last, they reached the central chamber. The energy here was intense, pulsing with a rhythmic force that made the floor vibrate beneath their feet. A massive core floated above the ground, spinning slowly, encased in a translucent field of energy that crackled and shimmered. The storm outside seemed to respond to it, lightning flaring and winds twisting in unnatural directions. This is it, Elias said, his voice low but resolute. We disable this, the storm stops. Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide. It is dangerous. One mistake. I know, he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder, but we have to try together. The plan was simple but risky. Elias would guide the energy flow, using his human instinct to anticipate fluctuations, while Lyra manually adjusted the alien circuits to redirect the power safely. Timing had to be perfect. If the core overloaded, the energy would discharge outward, creating a storm far stronger than before. They began. Elias monitored the console, calling out adjustments. Lyra moved with speed and precision, rerouting circuits, isolating power nodes, and redirecting energy flows. Sparks flew and the chamber hummed with tension. Every misstep could be fatal. For a tense moment, the core surged violently, energy arcs striking the walls. Lyra froze for a heartbeat, then Elia's calm voice guided her. Now, Lyra. Redirect the secondary node, she acted, and the surge stabilized, the energy pulsing more rhythmically. Minutes stretched like hours. Sweat dripped from Elia's brow, and Lyra's breathing was shallow but controlled. Together, they synchronized their movements, human intuition and alien calculation merging into a perfect rhythm. Finally, the core's energy began to diminish. The translucent field faded and the spinning mass slowed, then stopped completely. The station's lights stabilized, glowing softly instead of flickering. Outside, the storm began to die down. Winds calmed, rain softened, and the sky shifted from violent crimson to a muted, peaceful shade of gray. Lyra stepped back, her body trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline. It is done, she whispered, barely daring to believe it. Elias smiled, relief washing over him. We did it together. For a moment, silence filled the station. The hum of the energy systems returned to a steady, safe level. The storm outside had transformed into a gentle wind, almost calm in comparison to what had raged before. Lyra looked at Elias, her luminous eyes reflecting admiration and awe. You humans are remarkable, she said softly. I did not know, I did not understand. You survive even when everything is against you. Elias shrugged, a faint smile on his face. We survive because we adapt, we plan, we work with what we have. And sometimes we find allies when we need them most. He glanced at her. You helped too. We couldn't have done it without you. She nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. Yes, together, you taught me patience, caution, cleverness. Not only strength can save, but mind. Elia's smile widened. Exactly, that's what humans do. We solve problems even when it seems impossible. That's how we survive and thrive. For a long time, they simply stood in the chamber, catching their breath, watching the storm finally lose its fury. Outside, the planet was scarred but calm. The energy that had caused so much chaos now dissipated. Elias recorded the event in his log, careful to note the storm's unusual patterns and the cooperation between him and Lyra. This data would be invaluable not only for future missions but as proof of what humans could accomplish. Lyra moved closer, inspecting the core. We may have stopped it, but who built this? Why? She asked. Elias shook his head. I don't know yet. But whoever or whatever it was, it underestimated humans, and it underestimated the power of cooperation. That's something the universe is learning again and again. She considered this, her gaze thoughtful. Perhaps humans are more than we imagined. More than my people expected. Courage, cleverness, kindness, survival not only for self but for others. Elias nodded. Exactly, and that's why we're important, not just for ourselves but for those we help along the way. The alien station was still dangerous, its systems partially unknown, but for now they had achieved something extraordinary. Two beings from different worlds had combined their skills and wits to overcome a challenge that neither could have faced alone. The storm had been a test, and they had passed. As they prepared to leave the station, Lyra turned to Elias. You saved me, not only from storm but from fear, loneliness. You showed me humans are capable of wonder. Elias smiled. We all have the chance to be heroes in our own way. Sometimes it's not about fighting the storm, it's about facing it together. Outside, the sun began to rise, breaking through the clouds. Rays of light touched the rocky plains, reflecting off frozen pools of water and casting the station in a warm glow. The storm that had seemed unstoppable now appeared like a memory, fading into calm. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun for the first time in days. I will tell my people, I will tell them. Humans are not only survivors but thinkers, helpers, protectors. They can inspire. Elias nodded. And maybe someday your people and ours can work together. Imagine what we could accomplish. For a long while they simply stood, looking out over the plains, reflecting on everything they had faced. The storm had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and forced trust where fear had once existed. But now they had emerged stronger, wiser, and with a bond that spanned the galaxy. Elias finally spoke, breaking the quiet. We should head back to the shelter. We need to report this, analyze what we learned, and plan for the future. But for now, let's take a moment to enjoy this calm. Lyra smiled faintly, a gesture that felt almost human. Yes, a moment of peace. And so they returned together, walking across the plains now softened by the sun's light, leaving the alien station behind. The storm had ended, but its lessons remained. The value of courage, intelligence, trust, and cooperation. In the galaxy, humans were often underestimated. But Elias Ward, standing side by side with Lyra, knew the truth. Humanity's resilience, creativity, and willingness to act, not recklessly, but with purpose, could overcome even the most impossible challenges. And somewhere, deep in the patterns of the dissipating storm, a quiet acknowledgement seemed to linger. The universe had witnessed human ingenuity, and it would not forget. Together, human and alien walked toward the shelter, ready for whatever the future might bring, their alliance stronger than fear, stronger than the storm itself. To survive the storm, she ran into my shelter, then froze at the sight of a human.